is Christina, and I am redoing speech 3, which is our persuasive speech. In speech 3, I did not give a clear thesis statement. I didn't have an attention getter, and I really didn't specify my call of action. And I kind of used the old resource and, not enough new ones, you know, to back up my persuasive speech. So I want to start over. My name is Christina Madison, and my persuasive speech is over how pedophiles or sex offenders should not and should not be able to adopt children. It's already a law, but I just want to keep the law in place. I want to keep the law there to protect adopted children. Um, and I want to state my action plan. My action plan is more so to stop people from allowing, stop adoption agencies from allowing sex offenders, the right to adopt. And I want the adoption agencies to, run background checks and screens on people who are trying to adopt children. That is my action plan. This is what I want to happen. So I want to start with this fact that I read. It is kind of old. It's about 5 years old, so almost 6. So back in May of 2005, Fox News reported that there was a sex offender who adopted over 50 children. And not only did he or she adopt them, they wrote on the application that they were a registered sex offender. So, in a sense that there is already a blanket law, there's a blanket ban, which is the law for anyone who is convicted or considered a sex offender is not allowed to adopt children. Some people like Helen Reese. She is a speaker for the Firm Law in London. She thinks that this discriminates sex offenders, and she thinks that it is unfair, and this just shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be a blanket law. There shouldn't be a sex offender's residency restriction. That's the actual law, which went into effect in August of 2006. Over 21 states and over 400 local governments adopted that law already, and that was back in 2006. She just goes on to state in every argument or every discussion about this, even in November of 2010, she still stated that this law just shouldn't be here, and that every case should be screened, and it should, have a background check and investigate it. And I agree, because not all sex offenders got on the sex offenders list by necessarily molesting or raping someone, doing something so horrific. But in the same sense, you could just never tell. And she also believes that some people change after their sentence. Someone who has done it once may not do it again. And my problem with that is that you're allowing children to be at risk to see whether or not that person is going to do it again. So through my speech, I just want to, continue to talk about the adoption process. I want to talk about the child and the parent, how being adopted by a sex offender could affect the child and the parent, and the child's life and presumably the community. The blanket law is, again, I want to clarify that it covers all cases or instances of something. In this case, the blanket law is covering sex offenders not being allowed to adopt children. I want to start off with talking about adoption. Adoption is when a child is given up or taken away from its birth parent and is put into either adoption agency, a foster home, and then a person, it could be a family member or it could be a complete stranger, comes in and wants to take the child into its home as its own child, And so they move into them, they raise them, they groom them. The child, in most cases that I've seen, a child thinks about adoption. They want to get out the foster home. They want to get out the adoption system. They want somebody to love them. It may not be necessary that their parents didn't love them. They may not have had, the money or the sources to take care of that child in some cases. And then here we are putting, our children into a foster home or giving up for adoption instead of abortion. And then parents find out that their child has been adopted by a sex offender. That could hurt the parents. The parents could feel even worse. They may already feel bad for getting up for adoption, and now they feel even worse. Just being adopted by a sex offender affects a lot of people. Like, even if they adopt a child, somehow, some way, somebody could find out that their parent is a sex offender, and then people, harass them. They're harassing the child. The child gets teased. The sex offender might be doing something to the child, and that could affect the child's life. It's not something that's easily, just thrown out the window. Like, oh, it could affect the child's life. The sex offender could hurt the child again. And so Helen is wanting us, to give everybody a chance. I believe in second chances, just not when it's dealing with children in their lives. And I believe that sex offenders are likely to do it again, especially when they have a child living in their house. It's like temptation. We're basically putting the child out there and waving him as bait to see what it is he's going to do. And I just think the adoption agencies should screen the parents. You want to be consistent and, do your work. And you should make sure that the child is going to a safe home. You should run the case. Screen the parent. If it is a sex offender, run the case. See what it is the person did. If it was molestation, rape, anything, horrifying, you should probably not let them do that, But in some cases, we do have cases where girls or boys lie about their age. And then, something happens and end up in court and the person goes to jail anyway, even though it may not have been their fault. It's just still a chance, So I hope that I convinced you. I know in my own cases, I know people who have been adopted, and I know people who have been molested in adoption. Adoption, we try to see it as a safe way, placing our children, but sometimes it's not. And it's not okay to just give anybody a child, and to put another human's life in their hands. It could affect the child mentally, emotionally, physically. Their future could be ruined. Some people aren't as strong to deal with stuff like that. And then you have some people that are. But I don't think that it's discriminating people. I don't think that we're just discriminating sex offenders because you wouldn't have did what you did to get on the list in the first place. And I think that for the children's sake and for the adoption agency's sake, if they care about the children, we want to care about the children, we should screen everyone. And we just, more states should adopt, the sex offenders residency restrictions, as in, one, they can't have children. They're not allowed to be around children. I think that's a safe, place, a safe hold. You do something bad, you get punished for doing it. And I think for sex offenders, that punishment is not being allowed to be around children. You get punished for your actions. So I'm going to state again that my action plan is to back up the law that's already in place, the blanket ban that's already in place for sex offenders, and I want to enforce, adoption agencies to continue to screen sex offenders and be just a little more careful. And I hope that I cleared everything up and made it a tad bit more clear of my persuasive speech on how sex offenders are not, should not, never should be able to adopt children, for the sake of the child and for the sake of the parents and for just safety. The child wants to feel safe. They're happy. They finally feel like somebody's going to love them, and then they turn out to hurt them even more. And they already feel hurt because they're already in adoption. I just don't think that that's healthy. I don't think that it's safe. So, thank you for watching my video.